As a typical college student, my contributions to the well-being of the environment usually consist of some basic recycling, carpooling when possible, and limiting my use of resources such as water and electricity. Reduce, reuse, recycle has sort of been the mantra of my peer group for a while now, so it comes pretty naturally. However, my visit to 3 Middle Georgia farms has showed me how narrow my understanding of that mantra actually was. It goes far beyond recycling your water bottles and repurposing that ugly dresser you found on Bobcat Exchange. It's a way of life. The first farm that we visited was Salamander Springs, which, as the farmers pointed out, is technically a homestead. This means that the land serves as a residence as well as an agricultural resource. The residents at Salamander Springs worked on the farm for the owner Debbie in exchange for room and board through the Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms program. The garden style seemed purposefully unkempt, akin to wildlife thriving in its natural habitat. Used furniture had been brought back to life with colorful paint and peaceful images, and was scattered around the land, offering comfort and hospitality in an otherwise wild scene. The structures on the property were also made of repurposed and repainted materials, adding to the eclectic vibe of the homestead. These structures consisted of cabins for the woofers, libraries that held used books, and sheds that stored reusable plastic planters. The most modern structures on the land were the solar panels, which provided electricity for the main house. The rest of the property didn't have a need for electricity, as they didn't use any electronics. Despite not having electricity, they still had access to a warm shower. Their shower water ran through a hose that brought water from the natural spring. This hose then ran through the compost pile, which heated the water due to the microbial breakdown of organic material. The compost pile wasn't just full of vegetable scraps, though. It included human excrement, which they collected in barrels from their poop fort. This compost, after breaking down, would be used as a nutrient-rich fertilizer for the garden. At the end of the tour of Salamander Springs, I had the opportunity to talk with Laverne about what we thought of the farm. We had both noticed the non-uniform shapes of the produce. Most of it didn't look like the produce in the grocery store. Laverne and I discussed how large produce purchasers, like Walmart and Publix, create a lot of waste by refusing to buy and sell produce that didn't fit their picture-perfect standards. As Michael Carolyn points out, large retail firms wield tremendous buyer power, which allows them to simply tell manufacturers and wholesalers what they're willing to pay and what they're willing to buy. Salamander Springs, on the other hand, uses all of their produce, regardless of their adherence to beauty standards. Our next stop was Babe and Sage, which is owned and operated by Georgia College graduates Bobby and Chelsea. Babe and Sage was more of a commercial farm. Their veggies sat in neat rows and they had all sorts of livestock. One of the most interesting sustainable practices at Babe and Sage was the way they kept the pests away from the plants. These sticky yellow papers were wrapped around plant blossoms. The smell of the blossoms attracted the bugs to the sticky paper, keeping the produce bug and pesticide free. This was surprising to me because, as Guthman points out, a farmer's decision to use toxic pesticides is often a matter of economic survival to ensure against crop loss, and therefore a loss of income. But these toxins, as Guthman also states, may be a contributing factor to obesity, so Babe and Sage is using alternative methods to ensure against income loss and keep their customers healthy. Our last stop on the tour was Rag and Frass. The farm is owned and worked by Julia Asherman, who took up farming after college and now prides herself on being able to contribute to the organic food movement and helping to make locally grown organic produce available to local communities. This farm was similar to Babe and Sage in that it was commercial in nature and utilized large crops in greenhouses. To me, the most notable sustainable practice was the use of seeds from plants from the previous harvest. Julia would save a few vegetables from each crop and harvest their seeds to plant the next one. This stood out to me because it reminded me of Carolyn's discussion on how a number of protections are utilized by the seed industry that discourage farmers from saving their seeds and replanting them the following season. These protections and regulations force the farmers to keep purchasing new seeds each season, rather than utilizing resources they already have. While it is true that these regulations only apply after the farmer initially purchases the seeds from the seed distributor, Carolyn points out that the rate of saving seeds fell drastically for both corn and soybean, and other crops are likely to follow. If you look at the sustainable practices used by these 3 farms, you can see how much thought actually goes into sustainability. Unfortunately, there are many factors, including policies, regulations, and the capitalist nature of our agricultural system, that prevent some farmers from following these practices. Maybe someday we'll be able to change these factors and finally create a sustainable system.